I'm pretty sure we've talked about this team in almost, if not every single episode that we've done so far on this show, just indirectly because of what could happen this summer if Giannis Antetokounmpo does end up asking for a fresh start, and doesn't remain in Milwaukee. But we're finally going to actually break down the Bucks, and frankly, I think this is going to be one of our shorter episodes because there isn't a ton of dynasty upside here, and there's more questions than answers about how this team is going to look, about how it's going to impact fantasy. It's a lot of unknown right now, so we'll speculate some. We will talk through different scenarios about how different things could work. Maybe a few players to potentially bank on for the future. But a lot of what this team is probably going to look like in a few years, a lot of those guys are not on this roster right now, I don't think. We'll break it all down. Before we do that, I wanted to remind you that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Of course, we've got baseball season in full swing. We've got the NHL and NBA playoffs going on right now. Yes, last night's game actually did happen. Like, I don't even, nobody has words for it. It's unreal. Aaron Nesmith getting hot the way he did. Another insane Indiana comeback. It felt like it's kind of crazy because they've been doing comebacks all playoffs, and then the Knicks, every time they got down 20, they came back against the Celtics, and now they're on the opposite end of that. And then it's the Tyrese Halliburton shot that his foot was on the line, but he thought it was the game winner. So he had, I don't care what he says about say he wasn't planning on it. He knew in the back of his mind, if I hit a game winning shot, I mean he's probably been thinking that since he got traded to Indiana, that he's gonna do the choke thing if he gets to play against New York in the playoffs. Anyways, what a start to both series. I know the Thunder kind of took over the second half of that game, but very excited to see how the rest of that series plays out. And yeah, the Knicks Pacers won 7 games. Please, I will take it currently. So we'll have tonight game 2 of the Thunder Timberwolves series. The Thunder favored by 7.5. If you want to get on the action, BetOnline's a great place to do that. And then in between the games, you know, they only one a night, so you can do it before or after the game. Works out great. But you can head over to the BetOnline casino. They have all the top Vegas style games, including poker and a live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. The Milwaukee Bucks. I'm hoping to be able to make this not significantly shorter just for the sake of still giving every team enough time to really talk through things, but I think that there's a lot of questions, and even if there was more security heading into next season as far as what this team's going to look like, they just don't have a ton of players on this roster that are super exciting in dynasty leagues. There's a couple younger prospects, but they didn't play many of them this year either. So a lot of question marks because of how much this team ran through veterans. Anyways, for the roster, they have the 47th pick in the draft this year. That's it. So just one lone second round pick. Next year, their first is involved in a pick swap. They actually don't have their own, like the rights to their own pick until 2031, whether it be uh, different sort of swaps or just directly having it traded it away. Like in 2029, it's they just don't have their first. A lot of the other years, it's up to be swapped. So they'll still get to make some picks, but if they wanted to lean in on a rebuild, they're probably going to need to get quite the haul of draft picks to be able to do that because they don't have their own. And what's the point in rebuilding and, well, tanking / losing games on purpose if you don't have your own first? It makes it difficult. You can rebuild, you can get young and focus on that and acquire younger players through trade, acquire other picks. But at the end of the day, there's no incentive to lose if you don't have your own first round pick. And that's kind of the situation that Milwaukee's in. They went all in on trying to win a second championship with Giannis and Damian Lillard. And for a number of different reasons, it just didn't end up happening, mostly because of injuries. Frankly, I don't think that the Bucks have had a healthy Giannis since they won, or excuse me, a fully healthy team since they won the championship. There's always been some injury, whether it be Damian Lillard this year, Giannis the year before, Chris Middleton before that. Um, there's always been something that got in the way. Really stinks that we likely only got 2 years of the Giannis Dame team. Um, Having them for one healthy playoff run would have been great. I think it feels like there's similarities, I guess, like a shortened version of what the Clippers have been going through, where it was like, can we please just get one playoff run with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard both healthy? And the one time we got it, it was in the bubble, and they blew through one lead at Denver. Um, I would imagine with Damian Lillard having torn his Achilles at his age, plus Giannis rumors for him asking out, not expecting that we're gonna get to see this team run it back again, which really stinks. Um, One of the bigger what ifs, not bigger, but like a big what if in NBA history. As far as who's under contract for next season, they still have Dame and Giannis under contract for a couple more years, and that's where most of their money's tied up. They also have Kyle Kuzma. We're saved. Kyle Kuzma. Great. Uh, Brooke Lopez is a free agent. Jericho Sims, Torian Prince, Gary Trent Jr. Free agents. Player options for Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, and Kevin Porter Jr. So this is what the roster looks like next year as of now. Giannis, Dame. So Giannis, who could ask out Dame, torn Achilles, Kyle Kuzma, AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr., Chris Livingston, Tyler Smith, a couple two-way guys. Is that, I mean, I know the answer. We all know the answer. Is that enough to really compete next season? No, it's not. Milwaukee was really good down the stretch of this season, of the regular season, but especially with Dame hurt, there's not much there for Milwaukee. So, frankly, it doesn't make sense to keep Giannis, which, I mean, you can argue, like, okay, they may never get a player like Giannis again. Like, yeah, they might not. They probably won't. Just like odds are that it would at least be a very, 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 very long time before they get a player of Giannis's caliber. But where do you like? What do you do as a franchise if you just hold on to him? What does that do? Do you have a chance to win a championship? Sure. If you have Giannis, you always have a chance, but you're not. He doesn't have much help, and then free agency isn't where you alter your franchise anymore. It's where you fill in the margins. Frankly, if Dame was healthy and Giannis was healthy, excuse me, if Giannis was back and Dame was healthy, obviously Giannis also needs to be healthy in this scenario, but they would have a chance in the East, but don't feel great about it. So getting young players in draft capital and something to kind of build for the future by trading Giannis away is probably the logical scenario. And there's been reports or rumors that they're going to look to, I think the word was gut, whatever team trades for Giannis, basically just make them overpay for Giannis, which Giannis is already one of the most valuable players in the league, make them overpay. So it's going to be basically every pick available, multiple young players, something where it's almost too much of, like, you're giving up too much for it to actually make sense. Like you're not going to have a good enough team to compete with Giannis. So, like, I think that's the idea, and I right now it is. I think that's more about trying to make a leverage play, but it also because it doesn't make sense. Why would you sacrifice both your future and your present to bring in Giannis if there's not going to be enough there for you to compete for a championship? I think you can do one or the other. Like if I'm a GM, I'll trade one like legit young upside player every draft pick I have, and maybe like one or two upside swings of guys that probably aren't going to pan out, but still could. And I think that's a fair offer for Giannis. So you do 4 unprotected first, 3 pick swaps, a young promising player, and a couple upside swings. I think that's fair. And I think it's more than enough for Milwaukee to start a rebuild. So say that is Houston, and you trade Alperen Şengün, a boatload of first, and they have extra first, so it doesn't have to be like 4 firsts and 3 swaps. It can be something else, and that's still an insane haul. And then a couple other young upside swings, which I don't know, maybe would that be like a Cam Whitmore? I'm sure Rockets fans would hate that, but that makes sense for Milwaukee. And I think it makes sense for Houston because, yeah, that team can win a championship. I think they can make other moves, but maybe it's not Alperen Şengün. Maybe it's Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and Cam Whitmore in firsts. I think that's a fair thing for both teams because Milwaukee's getting a few younger players to build with, a bunch of picks to build with, and Houston's gonna have a chance to win a championship. If you look at a team like Atlanta, and maybe this is slight bias, just noting that out there, hoping the Hawks trade for Giannis, a package around Jalen Johnson and picks, and the Hawks don't have this excess amount of draft picks, but a scenario where it's like a Jalen Johnson who is a star talent, is significantly younger, a player for Milwaukee to start building with, maybe like a Kobe Buffkin, a young upside swing who hasn't really even played yet because of injuries, and then some picks. Like I think that's a scenario that makes sense for Milwaukee and for Atlanta because Atlanta would still be able to compete because you're replacing Jalen Johnson with Giannis. As much as I love Jalen Johnson, Giannis is better, and if Jalen Johnson, like the odds are very slim that Jalen Johnson ever reaches a level of Giannis. There, I said it. Crazy take, I know. And then Kobe Buffkin's not really altering that much for them, but he's still an upside swing. And then whatever draft capital they have left. I mean, I know they kind of screwed themselves with the DeJounte trade, but they still have some draft picks. Something like that. Because if they trade away both their picks they have in this draft, that's 13 and 22. That gives Milwaukee a nice start. You get Jalen Johnson, Kobe Buffkin, 2 firsts this year. Plus, okay, maybe there's not much there right now, but I don't see Kevin Porter Jr. picking up a $2 million player option. So the rest of your team would, as far as young guys, it's like Andre Jackson Jr., Chris Livingston, Tyler Smith, AJ Green. Oh boy, good. At least Kyle Kuzma's still there. So we'll see what ends up actually happening, but that's probably the type of move that Milwaukee needs to make. They can say all they want that they want Amen Thompson, Alperen Şengün, and first-round picks for Houston. Houston would not be wise to do that. I don't care what anyone's like. People can disagree. That's totally fine. It's not going to change my opinion. I think that's a more polite way of saying that than I don't care what anyone says because they're wrong. Because you can disagree. That's fine. Having a lineup with Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, Giannis, like that's really good and it gives you a chance, but you're now in a very tough Western Conference. You need to stay healthy. Any injury could set you back because of the amount of other talented teams in that conference. You're trading away 2 uber young stars. Amen Thompson has showed all-star upside. Alperen Şengün was an all-star this year. Like that type of trade, it just doesn't make sense. Like you just let someone else trade for Giannis if they're saying you have to part with both Amen Thompson and Alperen Şengün. There was, what was it? There was like, I think it was when they were talking about trading Kevin Durant and like the offer, like when he was with Brooklyn and the offers that the Nets were asking for were like, maybe I'm making that up. I don't remember, but it was something like asking for 2 young future stars and multiple firsts for like 35-year-old Kevin Durant. It's like, come on, guys. It's not happening. I think Giannis is worth an unreal amount of draft capital and players, but we just have to think about it also makes sense for the team that's trading for him. Because like look, the type of player that he is they don't make him like this. He's a consensus top 3 player in the NBA. there isn't really an answer for him. I mean, he can't shoot and he's still averaging, excuse me, not can't shoot, but like that's his weakness is that he's not a strong shooter and he doesn't really hit free throws and he's a poor free throw shooter. And he still averaged 30.4 points, 11.9 rebounds, 6.5 assists, almost a steal, over a block. Like there just isn't an answer for him. So like that's why it makes sense for a team to trade away basically like whatever it takes, but at the same time, you're not trading away something that's going to not give you a chance to compete for a championship. Like for a team like Houston, trading away some of the like more like young upside guys, such as like a Cam Whitmore. To me, Cam Whitmore has upside, but he's not a player that keeps you from trading for Giannis. He could pan out and be a really good player, but he's not helping you win next season, in my opinion. And maybe he doesn't actually turn into a really good player. You have Giannis there, you can win a championship. As far as fantasy, I mean, he's 30. He'll be 31 in December. Like he's going to be one of the best players in fantasy basketball when you account for the poor free throws and the lack of threes. So if you build your team the right way, he's one of the best players in fantasy. In a redraft league, he'll probably go around 6 again. And that's because the few players that go in front of him don't have the deficiencies that he has, because the amount he gets to the free throw line, he hurts you more than anyone else. It hurts your free throw percentage more than anyone else. But listen, if he gets traded, you're not trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo with the intention for him to be sharing the ball and kind of being a co-star. Like you're trading for him with the intention for him to be your number one scoring option on offense. And he's still going to dominate the glass and he's going to make an impact defensively and he's going to play make and he's going to do all these things. But you're not trading for Giannis for him to take a back seat to anyone or even share the front seat with anyone. He is going to be the main guy on offense. There's not many players in the league that you would say that if he was on the same team as them, that you would consider them co-stars. Like he is the guy. There's a couple, and I think a lot of them would just depends on opinion. If he is in Houston, like a lot of those guys are going to take slight hits in usage, maybe get easier shots, so it helps efficiency. But we'll see where he ends up getting traded. Because if Giannis wants to stay in the East, it makes sense because it's a much easier path to winning a championship. And some of these teams can part with some pieces without having to sacrifice their whole team. But if Milwaukee wants to maximize their assets, it probably makes sense to trade him to one of the teams out west that adds a lot. I'm just running through ideas. I mean, San Antonio's been a team rumored. Would they consider, if they're able to keep the number 2 pick, trading De'Aaron Fox to Milwaukee? This is entirely speculation. I have no idea if this makes that much sense for either team, but trade De'Aaron Fox to Milwaukee. Yeah, I kind of hate it already. Anyways, but I'm going to play it through just for the sake of it. Trade De'Aaron Fox to Milwaukee, along with a couple of the other guys like a Kellen Johnson or Jeremy Sohan, and then keep the number 2 pick, draft Dylan Harper. Yeah, I don't really like that either. No, okay, played it through. But I think that Milwaukee, if they chose to want to kind of sort of compete next year, they would be more likely to get that type of production from a team out west than a team in the East. Regardless, zero concern about who Giannis is going to be in fantasy over the next few seasons. He's going to be dominant. He's going to put up similar numbers. And if he's on a different team, maybe some of these shots even come easier for him. If he's on a team that has a point guard that can set him up. And if that's Houston, it's Fred VanVleet / Alperen Şengün, or I guess he probably has to trade away Şengün or Amen Thompson. If it's San Antonio, that could be De'Aaron Fox. If it's Atlanta, that could be Trae Young. If it's another team, I'm sure there's another point guard. And he had that with Dame that made things easier, but obviously Dame's injury changes a lot of different things. But it really was poor timing for Dame. He'll be 35 in July. It's kind of hard to come back from an Achilles tear at this point. Like recently, like Kevin Durant was like very impressively able to come back from an Achilles injury. He missed the whole season. The idea now is that Jason Tatum's probably going to miss this whole next season, and he could come back, but like probably makes sense to just recover. So Damian Lillard could miss all of next season and be 36 years old by the time he plays again, especially because he is a little bit older than Jason Tatum. So it takes him a little bit more time. It's hard to be very optimistic about what Dame's going to be in the future. Try to take any approach other than a pessimistic one. He's insane. He's unreal in fantasy basketball and in real life. The production is amazing. Like even though he's not the same or doesn't have the same reputation that he did with Portland, like he's still averaging 25, 5, and 7. Like he's still one of the best offensive players in the league when healthy. I don't know exactly how far he'll drop down Dynasty draft boards. Probably won't drop far enough, frankly, to trying to be as polite about this as I can, but like it's very difficult to come back from an injury like this and produce anywhere near what he was before. So if he miraculously is able to come back and play at a high level, it's still probably going to be not the same as what it was. And by the time he does, he's 36, probably only has a couple years left. So the name value, I feel like, because it's like, but what if Damian Lillard comes back and is Damian Lillard for 2 seasons? Then yeah, but what if it doesn't? What if he doesn't? It stinks. It really does. I don't know. Again, not the most optimistic take on it, but that's just kind of where we are with Dame. Yeah, you could even like what's the advice here? Do you try and trade for him? I mean, I wouldn't really be wanting to part with any assets for him at this point. Do you try and trade him away? Well, I think you're going to run into the same issue, and nobody's going to want to trade any legitimate assets for him. Do you just hold on to him? I mean, sure, if you have the extra IR spot and you just want to let him sit in there and like hope maybe he comes back and is able to have some good games, and then you can trade him. That's probably the logical scenario here. But in reality, it's just we'll just be hopeful. Hopefully, Damian Lillard can come back. I'm hoping that happens. My honest, realistic take is that I wouldn't be too optimistic about Dame coming back and being what he was before. But I genuinely hope it happens because I think those kinds of stories are very cool, and I would hate to see a Hall of Fame career kind of end the way his did. Anyways, the rest of the Bucks, yeah, there's not. I mean, Kyle Kuzma. At the time, it was like, what is this trade? And then surprisingly, it didn't work out. Like he just was not very good in the playoffs. Was strange at the time that they traded away AJ Johnson and Chris Middleton. Like trading away Chris Middleton was fine because the amount of injuries that he's had over the past 2 seasons. It's like, okay, cool. Like trade away Chris Middleton. But like this deal didn't make much sense. They just drafted this super young player, AJ Johnson, in the first round and then immediately gave up on him. Like, well, why didn't you draft someone else if you didn't believe in him? Or why didn't you trade that pick at the time? Anyways, yeah, Kuz will be 30 in July. Kind of crazy. There's not too much to like here. In category leagues, it's a little bit better in points leagues, but he was still not very good when he got to the Bucks. And it wasn't very good in Washington this year either. It was just a really down year. I assume he'll be better next year, but not significantly better. 14.8 points, 5.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists per game this year. With the Bucks, it was 14.5 points, 5.6 rebounds, 2.2 assists. Yeah. Kuz will continue to be Kuz, which is not great for fantasy. Bobby Portis had the late suspension that kind of derailed his season, but he was solid, and he's a free agent now. No guarantee that he comes back. If he does, then maybe he'll see more minutes with Giannis gone, and that's good for him in fantasy. I think he's maybe one of the more intriguing options in dynasty leagues in Milwaukee, which is crazy because he's 30. So he's not like the super high upside guy, but he could change teams or he could stay, and his opportunity could increase either way. So Bobby Portis may be an enticing option. Gary Trent Jr. had some really awesome playoff games. He'll be a free agent. I'm assuming he'll get paid more than the $2 million he made this year. Kevin Porter Jr., again, player option. I would assume that he declines that and gets a bigger contract. He was once a promising player in fantasy basketball and dynasty leagues. Obviously had off the court issues. Has been able to, I guess, return to the NBA, and the numbers have been pretty good at times. I'm not super optimistic that the team's going to be willing to pay him a lot. And part of that probably is some of the off the court issues. But if he returns to Milwaukee and there is kind of a vacuum for minutes and shots, then sure, he could be productive. Some of the other, I mean, Andre Jackson Jr. is young, Chris Livingston's young, Tyler Smith is young, Ryan Rollins got to start some when Dame was out. They're all super young. I mean, AJ Green's 25 and he's older than all those guys. The issue with trying to analyze how this team is going to look is the fact that we can talk about how these guys looked in college or before the NBA, but we just haven't got to see them a ton in the NBA. We haven't got to see many meaningful minutes from a lot of them because Doc Rivers didn't want to play a lot of these guys. So next year he'll probably have to if Giannis is gone. It's hard to say exactly how it's going to look. I think Tyler Smith is probably still has the most upside on this team as far as like the young prospects. It's definitely the one worth stashing, I'd say. But there's just not a ton to be optimistic about. I think it's going to take a long rebuild unless they got Giannis with the 15th pick in the draft. So if they're hitting and getting a player like Giannis at that point in the draft, then sure, like that's how you rebuild the team. You don't need the number one overall pick to rebuild the team. You don't. But you have to hit on picks. So if they end up, like it hasn't happened yet, but assuming that Giannis gets traded and they're able to bring back a boatload of draft picks, you hit on your draft picks, it still takes a few years before you're competitive again. But we've seen teams do it. I mean, OKC, I know everybody talks about how many picks they acquired, but they gave up a lot to bring Paul George to OKC. And part of that was Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis as well. But they were able to kind of recover by trading away Russ, Paul George, adding a billion picks, adding SGA. And it only took them a couple years to rebuild. And that was best case scenario. Most teams are not going to get an SGA back in a trade. Most teams are going to take a little bit longer to hit on picks. Most teams are not going to get all the picks that OKC got. So I think this is going to be the start of a long, slow rebuild for Milwaukee. And because they don't have control of their first round pick until 2031, there's no guarantee that they're rewarded the way that that they're given the pick that they probably would need over the next couple of seasons to return to being relevant within a few years. So it could be multiple seasons of late picks, which would not go very well. Would be very difficult to build a team just drafting late in the first round. In the second round, they're going to need some luck on their side and somebody that's willing to pay the price to bring Giannis to their team. And that's kind of the direction for them. But like I said, the dynasty aspect of this team is quite limited because a lot of the guys that are somewhat intriguing just haven't got to play much with the way this team is currently constructed. Still worth stashing. I think next year will be an especially if they trade away Giannis, next year will be an interesting one. I think there'll be a lot more eyes in dynasty leagues on this Bucks team. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast. You can like, comment, subscribe, check out all the other episodes. You can follow me on Twitter at NoRuben22, and I will see you next time.